So what we're making today is super easy rough puff pastry. Take you through the ingredients. We're also going to make this pastry into an absolutely delicious homemade sausage roll. So what we've got is 250 grams of good quality plain flour, some ice cold water from the fridge. We're not going to use all that, probably about 150 ml. Got 250 grams of really high quality salted butter, 400 grams of sausage meat for your filling, about a teaspoon of salt, some flour for your surface, 1 egg yolk for egg wash and for sealing the pastry when you put your sausage meat in. So a couple of things to consider. Sausage meat, yes, you can make your own. Go to the butcher's and get some sausage meat, add your flavourings to it, or you can just get your favourite sausage from the supermarket, take the skin off, make sure you take the skin off, otherwise it'll be super tough, and pop that into a bowl. So what we're using here is a seasoned pork mix with apple and cheddar, and that's just going to add loads of flavour to it. And I'll show you how to make the easiest rough puff pastry you'll ever make. So a key to making a good pastry, whether you're making rough puff like we are today, or whether you're making a short crust or any other kind of pastry, is keeping your ingredients really cold. Cold hands, cold work surface, cold area, because the last thing you want to do is your butter to melt, your pastry to get warm, and it makes it really difficult to work with. So everything has just come straight out of the fridge, and what we're going to do is add the salt into our flour, and then we're going to pop the butter in. So all the butter is just going to go straight in, and that's cold straight from the fridge. Now if you were making a short crust, what you'd be wanting to do is create breadcrumb like texture with this. All we're going to do is just going to squish that butter flat. So what we're not is we're not combining this. We're going to be as quick as we can, because again we don't want that butter to melt. We want it to stay cold in the dish. And what's going to happen is when we roll this out, we're going to have a lovely marbled effect, which I'll show you. That then, when we do the folds in the pastry, it's going to create layers and lamination, and then just give it a good mix around in the flour. Okay, that is as much as you want to do with the butter. And as you can see, still got loads of big lumps in there. That's what we need. Ice cold water straight from the fridge, and what we're going to use is about 150 ml, but we're just going to gradually add it. Get your hands in there and mix this around to create a dough. Again, not rubbing it, we're not wanting to make short crust. And we've done even amounts of flour and butter in this, because it's going to make a super buttery pastry for our lovely sausage rolls. So we're going to add a little bit more into there, not too much, because if ever you've made pastry or anything like that, scones, dumplings, you'll know it goes from being a really dry mix that doesn't look like dough, to being far too wet. If you do put too much water in, don't worry, because we can add more flour. Even though we're using equal quantities and that's the measure for this particular pastry, it wouldn't be a disaster if you had to add in 5-10 more grams of flour just to make sure that it's the right consistency. So you can see that's coming together really well, but we've still got some crumb at the bottom. So again, we're just going to add a little bit into there, pick that up, make sure we haven't dropped too much on the side. I'm not the neatest of bakers and chefs. So that is almost there, which is probably just the tiniest little drop more of water. And what we're not doing is overworking this. We're just going to put just a little drip on there, and that will make a difference to what it's picking up out of the dish. Right, beautiful. So now we've got that in there. You can see how that's come together. It's a little bit like a scone mix. If you've never made scones before, check out my videos. We've got homemade easy scones on there, or scones. Again, the debate goes on. Okay, so this is what kind of work surface you've got. If you're working on granite or quartz, then you're not going to need much flour at all, and it's going to stay nice and cold, which is great for working pastry on. If you haven't, you can always buy boards that are made out of that, and that makes your pastry a bit easier to make. So I've got pastry all over my hands, that's fine. So if you have a look, what you can see is all those big pieces of butter in there, and that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for all this lovely marble effect in your pastry. Okay, the next thing is the roll. So how you roll it out is then going to be how you create these layers. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to give that a roll, get a bit of flour on our... What you don't want is loads of flour between the layers. That's not going to help do what you need it to do. So, see, it's picking up the butter there. Just get a little bit more on there. So what we're going to do is roll this out, and then very quickly, because we don't want it to get too warm, we're going to fold it over once, and we're going to fold it over again. Now you can see already, this is what happens when it starts to get warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that over, and I'm going to wrap that up in some cling film, and we're going to pop that in the fridge to rest. Okay, so that's been in the fridge for around 15 minutes. If it's too warm, even before you do the first roll, you can just leave it in the fridge to rest for around 15 minutes, just so that your butter isn't getting too warm. We're going to lightly flour that surface again, just to stop it sticking. And same with our rolling pin. And then what we're going to do is the first proper roll. So we're going to roll this out. And as you can see, you've still got that lovely marble butter. It's quite warm in here today, so we're already starting to melt a little bit. So you'll see what I mean by that. So we're just going to roll that out. Get butter stuck to the... As you can see, it's already starting to get too warm. So we're going to put... So even on this cold surface, it can make it more difficult. So we're just going to... We don't want it to pull it apart. And all we're going to do is we're going to turn it that way, and then we're going to turn it that way. And as you can see, we've made a roll, and then we're going to turn it the opposite way, so 90 degrees. Get some flour on there, get some flour on our rolling pin, and give it another roll out. Now, if it starts to stick again, we're just going to stick it back in the fridge. And this is the lengthy part of the process, but it's worth getting it right. So as you can see, we're getting butter already on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it, and as you'll see, what we're now starting to get is what looks like pastry. I'm just going to wrap that up in some cling film. That's going to go back in the fridge for another 15 minutes. Okay, so that's been to chill. As you can see, what we've got is some rolls in there, and that's been in to chill for 15 minutes. If you're finding that it's getting sticky really quickly, instead of putting it in the fridge, you can always put it in the freezer, just to make sure that what you want is that butter to be really chilled and your pastry to be super cold. Makes it so much easier to work with. So we're going to start with that fold. Facing the opposite way than when we rolled it last. And we're going to roll this out. And we're going to be fairly delicate, I guess, with it. We don't want to be, because all we're going to do, you can see it's now, you might not be able to see all the butter, but it will still look completely different to your regular short crust pastry. And then all we're going to do is another fold and another fold, and put some more flour on there, a little bit on there, a little bit on there, and some more on your pin. And we're going to roll it out again, and it's starting to firm up now. Now what you've got is an acceptable pastry straight away there. You don't have to roll it out any more than this. 3 turns minimum, I would say, for doing rough puff. There's 2 ways to do it as well. You can actually do something called a buck turn, which is where you turn it inwards and then fold it over. So that's another way of doing it. So because we've done that one, and I've shown you that one, I'm just going to roll it one more time. Like this. Just to make sure those layers are all together. And there we go. And then one final turn. Now that is going to go back in to chill for another 15 minutes. We're reusing the same bit of cling film because I like to be as eco-friendly as possible. And that's going to go back in the fridge or freezer, whichever is best for you, for another 15 minutes. And then we're going to make some sausage rolls. Okay, so now we're ready to make some sausage rolls. So our pastry is ready. So we're just going to flour this surface. And again, we're going to work as fast as we can, flour because what we want to do is, again, we just want to keep this nice and cold. So I've set the temperature on the oven to 180 degrees fan oven. And what we're going to do is we're just going to get it to the kind of width we're going to do. And what we're going to do is roll it into a length, because we're going to use this to fold. We're going to make one long sausage roll, and then we're going to cut it to go in the tray, egg wash it, etc. So what we're looking for on the pastry is around about, that's going to be too wide, so we're just going to push that in a little bit. And we're looking for about 1/2 centimetre width. Now if you want to make more sausage rolls, obviously, you just make more pastry, double up your recipe. So this is starting to roll out nicely. Let's get a little bit of flour on there. We're going to brush off any excess flour anyway after we've rolled it out. If you've had it in the freezer, you'll find it a little bit difficult to work, but as it starts to soften, it'll become a lot easier. So we're just going to do that. Flip it over and do this. And again, we're going to take off any excess flour. So you can actually get like tracks and things that'll so either side of your rolling pin, just so that you can get an exact sort of depth. Honestly, I'm not fussed because these are not shop window. It's not going to affect the taste. All I'm looking for is an even bake, so as long as it's fairly even all the way across, like that, that's your rough puff. So I'm just because I don't want it to stick at the final point, I'm just going to quickly just make sure we're even on both sides. Beautiful. And that's your beautiful rough puff pastry. Very quickly, we're just going to add in our sausage meat, and all we're going to do is spread that 400 grams sausage meat evenly across your sausage rolls there, across your pastry, the centre, just off centre of your pastry. Again, the reason for it being as even as possible is that you want it to cook evenly in the oven. And you can hear my oven's just gone off there, beeping in the background. That's brilliant. That means it's up to temperature. As always, make sure you, even in a fan oven, just make sure it's at temperature before you put it in. You want the right temperature because this is a high butter recipe. So I'll just wash the hands off a bit there. So this is a high butter recipe for rough puff. So you are going to get a lot of leakage, but that's fine because it's going to, well, you'll see when it comes out, but it's going to caramelise and it's just going to add to that flavour. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our egg yolk and we're just going to egg wash just down one side of this. Not too much, but just enough to bind your pastry together. There we go. I'll just set that on one side for a second, and then it's just a case of flipping it over. There we go. Into one long sausage roll, and then make sure we've not got any spillage just yet in there. That's fine. And however you want to do it, you can pinch it like so. Do a nice little fold along there, or you can just very simply, again, just give that a nice press down with the edge of a fork, just to stop the leakage. And we're going to do it all the way around, right round to the end of each side. A little bit of extra meat there. Okay. Now what you could do is you could actually pop it straight in the oven on your baking tray like that, and then chop it when it comes out. So this is going to make, what, 6 good sized sausage rolls, or however you want to do it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it, what do you reckon, into 3, so that's about a third. So we're going to cut one there, and we're going to cut one there. That's perfect. I'm going to move them to one side. We grab our baking tray, which we've pre-lined. Make sure we're happy with that's all knitted together. You can trim the edges as well. So what you can do is you can trim those edges off if you want. Me, I absolutely love pastry, so it's staying as it is. And just going to give us plenty of room on your baking tray, and we're just going to give these a final egg wash over the top with that yolk. You can use synthetic pastry brushes and things like that. However, one like this will always give you a much better covering, and it won't start digging into your pastry and ruining its look at the end of it. So we're not being overly precious about how that goes on there. And so we've got 3 very generously sized sausage rolls there. However, when they come out, you can cut those down into whatever size you want. So it's going to make at least 6, if not 12 minis. So we're going to pop those in the oven, 180 degrees on a fan oven, which is your standard kind of temperature for any pastries you're using. And that's going to be in there for around about 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll check in after 20 minutes, see what they look like, and take it from there. So I've just taken these straight out of the oven. Because we've not cut them into small pieces originally, they've not leaked loads of butter everywhere, but you have got, even though it's a high butter recipe, as you'll see, a little bit of leakage there. But as you can see, if we just zoom in, what you've got is all those beautiful buttery layers of tasty puff pastry. So even though we've not gone to the effort of making a full-on puff pastry, because of the way we've folded it and because of the way we've added the butter, what you've got is this beautiful lamination, which is going to make a delicious rough puff pastry. So I'm just going to show you what these look like. Now, when I cut into them, after sort of 25 minutes, they weren't quite ready. So just to make sure we've got that lovely lamination there and everything's cooked through beautifully. And we've put them back in and these took another 10 minutes. So like anything you make, timings are always going to be different. So these have been in at 180 for 35 minutes roughly. But because we did the initial bake with them in bigger pieces, the butter stayed in there. We've cut into them and then put them back in again. And what that's done is it's just made that pastry even flakier, made sure everything's cooked through perfectly. Enjoy your sausage rolls. I hope this video has been useful, and I hope you like and enjoy making these for yourself. Let me know in the comments. Check out some of the other videos I've made. Everything's cooked from scratch at home, and it's things we all like to eat in the household. So enjoy your sausage rolls.